Hi, I'm Ava. I have something important to say to everyone here at my husband John's funeral. He died in an accident. Suddenly, during the funeral, Ava, John's daughter, took the microphone. People were confused. Ava didn't care about their reactions. She pointed at me and shouted angrily. She said that my late husband, her dad, only saw me as a housekeeper, not a mother. I was shocked by her sudden outburst. I wondered if she really meant those words. I kept thinking about what she said, but it was hard to understand. I couldn't believe she hated me. We used to get along well, even though we're not related by blood. As time passed, I felt more and more hurt by her words. It seemed like she really despised me now. Even though we tried to talk things out, Ava kept insulting me. The staff tried to calm her down, but she kept looking down on me and repeating her mean words. I remembered a promise I made to my late husband, so I spoke up to Ava. I told her I would stay strong, no matter what. She looked surprised at my words. I repeated that I meant it, no matter what happens. I live in an apartment with my daughter and husband. We usually have a good life together. Today, I didn't have work, so I decided to relax at home after finishing my chores. While I was drinking coffee on the sofa, I saw a photo of our family from a trip. It made me remember how I met John. It's been 7 years since we got married. We met when I was working outside and dropped some papers. He came over to help me, even though others ignored me. That memory means a lot to me. Our offices were close, so we started talking during our breaks and lunchtime. John was older than me, but he was a good and honest person. I liked his lively and straightforward personality more each time we met. We exchanged contact information and started planning to meet up. I was happy about it, but there was one thing bothering John. He told me he had a child, a girl who was in elementary school. John's wife had passed away when the child was young, so he had been raising her alone. He wanted to marry again and wanted me to meet his daughter, Ava. I didn't have much experience with kids because I'm an only child and don't have young relatives. But I wanted to be part of John's family, so I agreed to meet Ava. John told me about Ava and showed me pictures of her smiling happily with him on a trip. I said she looked adorable and happy. John confessed that he had been spoiling Ava a lot because he felt sorry for her not having a mother. He would go out of his way to fulfill her wishes. Ava, who's been spoiled by her dad, can sometimes be stubborn and get into arguments with friends. While I found their bond cute, I wondered if I could handle being a parent because I don't have much experience with kids. But I believe that with John's support, we could handle anything. Seeing John's smile, although a bit worried, reassured me. A week later, I was supposed to meet Ava for the first time at the zoo, her favorite place. I arrived early and waited at the entrance. After about 15 minutes, I heard a child crying and saw John rushing towards me with Ava in his arms. He apologized for being late because it was hot and Ava was upset. She wanted a specific hat, but it wasn't available because of laundry issues. John tried to calm her down, but she kept crying because she wanted the panda hat. They had been arguing since the morning, which made them late. I suggested buying a hat from the zoo shop, and Ava stopped crying when I held her hand. John looked relieved, and we went inside together. We went into the zoo, and Ava showed her strong-willed side all day. When things didn't go her way, she threw tantrums and refused to move until John bought her what she wanted. She got upset from the heat and got angry when she couldn't see the animals she liked. It seemed like a lot for a kid her age. But besides those moments, Ava was smart and cute, just like John. She really liked pandas, and everything she had, like socks and bags, had pandas on them. When we got to the panda area, she forgot about being upset and was happy and excited. I promised to buy her a panda hat, and when I did, she put it on right away and said thank you with a big smile. Even though I still worried a bit, that day showed me what life could be like with John and Ava. After a zoo trip, we kept having meals together about once a week. Ava started to warm up to me, and when John asked me to marry him again, Ava was happy about it. We got married, and Ava, John, and I became a family. But Ava's picky eating habits were noticeable. She didn't like many foods and mostly ate frozen meals or ate out. John said they used to rely on those before. But eating like that every day isn't healthy. I did my best to cook vegetables that Ava didn't like, hiding them in dishes so she could still eat healthily without noticing. Shopping with Ava was hard because she would wander off or refuse to move unless she got what she wanted. It would have been easier if John was with us, but sometimes he had to work. Since I didn't have much experience with kids, I struggled at first to know how to calm her down when she threw tantrums. But I couldn't give in and buy her everything she wanted because we already have similar things at home. Sometimes I felt like crying when Ava cried in the supermarket because she couldn't get what she wanted. But with love and responsibility, I tried my best to be a good parent to Ava and stuck by her side through everything. As Ava got older, her behavior improved, and we started to have a good parent-child relationship. Now, I truly see her as my daughter, and I think she sees me as her parent too. I was lost in these thoughts when I heard Ava come home and say she was hungry. She had chosen a high school with a good job program and was doing well in her studies and tennis club. It was time for Ava to decide what she wanted to do in the future. During dinner, I asked her about her plans. She surprised me by saying she wanted to get a job instead of going to college. John and I had been saving money, thinking she might go to college later. I suggested she could still go to college if she wanted. I didn't want to stop her from working, but I wanted to make sure she was doing what she really wanted. Ava said she decided not to go to college because she wanted to start giving back to us soon. Her words made me happy. It seemed like she wanted to be independent sooner rather than going to college. John and I decided not to push her to change her mind. We were proud of her for making a thoughtful decision. Ava graduated from high school and got a job at a local factory as she planned. But after about 3 months, she started missing work often, and I was worried. She said she wasn't sick, but she kept missing work more and more until she stopped going altogether. I tried to cheer her up by inviting her out for shopping or lunch on my days off, but she hardly ever accepted. She still ate dinner at home, but she always said she wasn't hungry when I invited her for lunch. Also, she talked a lot when John was around, but she became quiet when it was just the two of us. I wondered if something was wrong at work or if she was stressed. I thought we had a good relationship, but her distant behavior made me worried. My concern grew as time passed, but there was a part of me that couldn't seem to bridge the gap between us. I still worried about Ava's recent behavior, so I talked to John about it. Ava had told him she quit her job. I wondered why she found it hard to talk to me about it. I realized that the time spent between John and me was different. It was natural for her to turn to her dad first since he had been with her since she was little. I tried to understand this. Then Ava started staying home all day without finding another job. I couldn't keep my worry to myself anymore, so I talked to her through her door. I asked her what was wrong and told her I was worried. She replied that she was fine and wanted me to leave her alone for now. When it was just Ava and me at home, she stayed in her room. But when John came home, she joined us for dinner in the living room. One day, when John was later than usual, Ava was still in her room, and I waited at the dining table for him. He usually lets me know if he's going to be late because of overtime, but he hadn't sent any message. I started to worry and was about to call him, thinking he might still be at work. My phone rang, and I had a bad feeling. Even though I was worried, I answered it because it kept ringing. It was the police, telling me that my husband had been in an accident on his way home from work. I felt like all the blood drained from my body, and it was hard to breathe. My smartphone slipped from my hand and fell to the floor. Ava came out of her room when she heard the noise and asked what was wrong. I told her about the call, and she looked worried too. She asked about Dad, and I explained what happened. Ava looked pale and sat down, feeling powerless like me. I can't remember how long we sat there, feeling confused. But we knew we had to do something, so I helped Ava to her feet, and we went to the hospital. There we found out that my husband had been killed instantly by a truck that ran a red light. It was hard to accept. Ava was devastated and couldn't say anything on our way back home. She had always been close to her dad, so losing him was really hard for her. I can't imagine how painful it must be to lose a parent, as mine are still alive. But as someone who lost my beloved husband, I knew I had to be there for Ava. I didn't want her to feel alone. This should have been a time for our family to come together and move forward, just like my husband would have wanted. But our home felt empty without him. I gathered my strength and told our relatives about the news and arranged for the funeral. Until the funeral started, Ava hardly talked to me. She seemed lost in her grief. When it was really necessary, Ava couldn't even eat properly and stayed in her room until we had to leave for the funeral home. Somehow, I got Ava to the funeral and sat her with our relatives. I had to talk to guests and the staff, so I couldn't be with Ava all the time. Luckily, John's relatives kept her company and talked to her. During the funeral service, I sat next to Ava and asked if she was okay, but she didn't answer. I was worried and kept looking at her, but she avoided my eyes. As the ceremony was about to start, Ava suddenly stood up and went to the microphone. The staff tried to stop her, but she ignored them and started speaking. She said she's Ava, John's daughter, and there's something she needed to say. Everyone was surprised by her unexpected speech. She pointed at me and said that her dad only saw me as a housekeeper, not her mom. She said she never needed me, only her dad. Her words shocked me, and I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Eva looked at me with a mocking smile, and her tone became really mean. I couldn't accept what she was saying, and I closed my eyes, remembering the happy times with John and Ava. I remembered the day Ava called me mom for the first time when John and I got married. But now, I wondered if Ava always hated me and if she would never call me mom again. Lost in my thoughts, Ava took the microphone again. She said she would inherit everything from Dad, and I, a stranger, wouldn't get anything. She told me not to show my face in front of her again. When I was away, Ava's clothes and shoes disappeared one day. I couldn't bring myself to clear away my husband's chopsticks and plates. I spent my days in a room filled with his things. Today, after finishing my part-time job, I came home to find Ava standing at the entrance, which surprised me because I hadn't seen her in a while. When she saw me, she quickly approached and started confronting me, saying this wasn't what we agreed on. I gently guided her inside to avoid disturbing the neighbors. Ava complained once we were inside, asking about the inheritance from Dad. It seemed she was worried because she hadn't received it yet. I told her that she wasn't John's biological child, which left her shocked. I explained that Ava was the child of John's previous wife, not related by blood. John had introduced her to me, but I kept silent about it, respecting his wishes not to hurt Ava. So legally, she didn't have a father listed. This revelation disturbed Ava a lot. She asked who could inherit then, and when she realized I would inherit, her attitude towards me changed. She tried to act friendly and said she could come back and help take care of me. But I reminded her that she said we weren't related anymore. She became upset and clung to my feet, saying she didn't mean what she said before. Then she tried to downplay it, but to me it seemed like her true feelings. Then, in a panic, she came up with another idea. She asked if I could share a bit of the inheritance with her because she had overspent and needed money. Ava was breathing heavily, and even though it wasn't very hot, she was sweating. It was clear she was upset. She had quit her job and hadn't looked for another one, thinking she would get the inheritance. This led her to spend money recklessly, leaving her with almost no money left. But I couldn't bring myself to want to help her. I remembered a request John had made when he was still alive. It was when Ava was still working, and John and I had a day off together. We went out for lunch at an Italian restaurant we used to go to before we got married. It was a place full of memories for us. Ava didn't like many foods, so it had been a while since we went there. We sat at a table with a view outside. The restaurant hadn't changed much, but the menu had some new items. However, the meals John and I always ordered were still there, which made us happy. I ordered pasta and John ordered pizza. We shared our dishes as we ate. After the meal, we had coffee and watched people outside. The sky was clear and blue, and even though the window wasn't open, I felt a sense of freedom. Then, John started a conversation, saying the place was still as good as ever. I agreed, and he mentioned they even had new dishes that Ava might like. I think we should come back here together next time, I replied. John happily agreed with my suggestion. He thanked me for getting along well with Ava, saying she could be stubborn but was his precious daughter. I agreed with him. The more I watched them, the more I saw how much John cherished Ava. His love for her went beyond blood ties, which I always admired. John then formally asked me to look after Ava if something happened to him. I felt a bit uncomfortable and asked if he was sick, but he assured me he wasn't. He just wanted to make sure Ava would be taken care of if anything happened to him. He then asked me to be strict with her if she ever disrespected me or did something unforgivable. Even though I didn't want to think about such a situation, I agreed to John's request. As I looked at Ava, who was still clinging to my leg with tears in her eyes, she persistently begged me to share some money with her. Despite what she said at the funeral, I couldn't believe that John only saw me as a housekeeper. There was a strong love between us that Ava probably didn't understand. Are you listening? You're going to share the money, right? I was Dad's daughter too, she said, trying to rise by holding onto my leg. I moved my leg away and reminded her to live strong, no matter what. Then I forcefully made her stand up and pushed her outside the door. I placed 4 paper bags filled with her belongings in front of her, then closed the door firmly without looking back. Half a year passed, and at first, Ava came to my house a few times, but I completely ignored her. Angered by being ignored, Ava began harassing me by leaving things in front of my house or sending demanding mail. When I witnessed one of her attempts, I told her disgustedly that I would report her to the police if she did it again. Perhaps accepting defeat, Ava eventually stopped coming by. I heard from John's relatives that Ava was struggling financially and even resorting to debt. The inheritance came to me, but I haven't used it yet, sticking to my part-time job. I only plan to use the money if necessary. Although I'm not living luxuriously, it's enough for me. I hope to lead a peaceful life, cherishing the memories I had with John.